Okay, let's start. Welcome to another episode of RavenDB webinars. This is the second mystery feature. This is going to be a small feature. I'm Daniel Dar from Hibernating Rhinos, and I have with me Damian Hickey. Say hello.
Hey everybody.
And today we're going to talk about a feature we're going to add to RavenDB 3.0. And I'm going to let Damian explain about it.
Good morning, good evening, from wherever you happen to be around the world. I have an Irish accent, as you may hear, so if I'm not understandable or I speak too fast, just let us know in the chat, and I will, repeat myself. It's not a problem. So I've been working on RavenDB for the last number of weeks on this particular feature, and it is essentially enabling RavenDB to work with OWIN. So OWIN, as a very brief introduction, I won't go too deep into it here, is an open web interface for .NET. Specifically, it defines a specification to separate your application from the hosting and server environment. That is in contrast to ASP.NET as you currently know, in that it generally can only run on IIS. And generally, even though Mono has some support for it, it's quite tightly bound to that. Where OWIN comes in, it allows you to create composable web applications using your choice of frameworks, and it allows you to use what's called middleware, which is the OWIN equivalent of iHTTP modules and handlers, to create an application that in theory can run on different hosting environments. So this has been developed for a number of years. We have the specifications are version 1.0, and we have a Microsoft have a project called the Katana project that supplies a bunch of OWIN components or OWIN compliant compatible components for you to create your applications. One aspect of OWIN apps is that they're also really testable. Let's have a look at what OWIN frameworks, what frameworks already support OWIN. So we have Web API support. Why Web API was developed before the Katana components were built. It does have a very similar kind of pipeline, so it's very easy to create adapters for that. Nancy FX, which has supported OWIN from the beginning, and we have most recent version of SignalLower requires you to use OWIN. And then of course we have FreeWebMC, Simple Web, Geo via HTTP, and a number of other both popular and not quite so popular frameworks out there. So from a hosting environment, as you know, Raven supports, it has a custom HTTP listener, its own, runs in its own executable, and it can run on IIS. So the hosting options are available right now if you're building an OWIN-based application, or system web, which basically is ASP.NET and IIS. That's a HTTP handler that it takes the HTTP context and converts to an OWIN environment and invokes the OWIN pipeline. It adds additional layers, but it allows you to kind of introduce OWIN into, I suppose, legacy apps, and it allows you to run on IIS right now. There is the HTTP listener. It's the standard .NET HTTP listener that some of us have used, the one that RavenDB used. And I mentioned that there's there's a host called NoWin, which is a pure socket-based one that has minimal dependencies. I'll demonstrate RavenDB running on NoWin in due course. And there's another one called Flix. Actually, I think it's called Fix. Actually, it might be a typo there. It's rated from the simple.web guys. Again, it's a lightweight. Doesn't require HTTP sys, ACLs to be able to run web apps. In the pipeline, from a hosting option, there's the fast CGI support. That is, again, another open source project. That will open the ability to run OWIN applications on alternative web servers such as Apache or Nginx, if that rocks your boat. There is a new version of HTTP Listener being mooted, which works directly on HTTP sys. Again, it's the same underlying layer as as IIS runs on, but without some of the cruft that is currently in the old HTTP listener, currently inside .NET Framework. Now this is the OWIN isapi.dll. I'm only muting that at the moment. I have a feeling it's been talked about and we don't know what's going to happen. Basically, it allows you to run your own apps on IIS without the whole system web ASP.NET layer. So a request comes in, doesn't get converted to a HTTP context first, and so forth. So I haven't mentioned some of the middleware, but I might just quickly pop up a. Okay, so yeah, sorry, from how it relates to OWIN. So the middleware, so the HTTP layer in Raven, which was based on what Oren called responders, has been replaced with, there's a typo there, sorry about that, has been replaced with Web API. This allows removal of a chunk of code, but this is more of an implementation detail. Unless you're creating bundles and you want to have your own route handlers, it's probably not going to affect you a whole lot. It's made no difference from a client perspective or a client library perspective.
Let me just.
Well, the idea is that. Sure, go ahead.
I'm just going to add into that. We made sure while we implemented the controllers to keep the same behavior. So if you had a request for 2.5 or 2.0, it will react the same way with the Web API and the OWIN in 3.0.
Backwards compatibility has been maintained.
Yeah.
And it allows, I think, RavenDB then in the future to use a different OWIN library, or if it wants to, it mix things around according to its needs. So what we'll do, it'll allow RavenDB to be hosted on alternative hosting servers and possibly in the future on alternative platforms, perhaps Linux and Mono.
This is part of the reason we did it, in order to get Mono support, this including with another mystery feature that will come in later.
Yeah. The one aspect that might, just say I should clarify, might slow that down slightly is the Mono doesn't have support for claims principle. But as I said, we're not really using that. RavenDB authentication is still maintained by itself. It should be fine. So as I mentioned, as I say in my last point here, it will possibly allow external authentication. So if you're creating a web application and you're exposing Raven or using it embedded, but you want to use your own auth authentication, which is different from authorization, of course. But you want to use your own authentication, or maybe one of the Katana project, Microsoft.own.security, .facebook or .twitter or .oauth, you in theory should be able to do that. And Raven should just kind of work with the claims principle that you supply it. But that's in the future. We haven't really tried that. One step at a time. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick demo of how to most host OWIN, RavenDB in an OWIN application. Okay, so making sure everybody can see my screen. Okay. So here we have a simple clear blank project, and what we're going to do is that we're going to add, we're going to create an OWIN application. We're going to embed Raven inside this application, and we're going to host it on an alternative server. We're going to use Known for this. Known's a relatively new package. It's not quite production ready, but it just gives you an example of what kind of ways we can embed and customize and componentize and compose these things. So briefly starting, I will need to add some packages to our solution. And we're going to use Known as our server. And I should actually add some references to the RavenDB stuff. So while this is content, the OWIN support's not available as a package yet, I'm going to do it just directly inside the RavenDB solution. Yeah,
obviously when we're going to start with the early version of 3.0, we're going to have a bundle, a NuGet package for this. and all these DLLs will be part of it, obviously.
Yeah, and we're shipping the OWIN support within Raven.database. Well, I think we are. That might be debated later.
Yeah.
But within Raven.database. So it's, and I'll show you Raven server already uses it already. So I'm just going to add those references. Okay, so when you're building an OWIN-based web application, this is if you've done this before, you'll be familiar with how this happens. So web app.start, and we need to create a startup class. Doesn't yet exist, and we're going to supply an options here. Now, server factories, creating a host factory in OWIN is done by convention. OWIN does not have any dependencies on Microsoft.OWIN or any of the hosts. It's completely independent. So we have to options equals startup options. And I'm going to do a server factory equals and port 8080. So these startup options, as passed into the web app, will cause it to scan the app domain for a server factory that matches a particular convention. That's inside the OWIN DLL.
Damien, did you
Yes.
8808 on purpose, or was it supposed to be 8080?
Yeah, that's correct. 8080.
Okay.
Okay, so I will create our startup class, and we're building our own applications. You're going to do this a lot. It's the same style. And to embed a RavenDB inside your own app, it is simple as use RavenDB. Now you can pass in your various RavenDB options, but we're just going to leave it with the standard default options for the moment. Okay, so that's going to host line. So what we're going to do, we're going to try to save a document and retrieve a document, the simplest example possible, just to prove that this actually works. Oh, do I have the client? It's client embedded. Sorry, wrong reference. Client.lightweight. Very good. That equals 80 and dot initialize, if I remember correctly. Yep. Just need to create a person document that we're going to store. Dot store person and we give an ID of /1. Session.saves changes, and now we're going to try and retrieve that document. Hope everything works first time round. Session.load. And we'll do a console. What do we key here? Okay, so I'm hoping this works first time. Let's see, make sure we're so start project. Okay, we have the server running. I'm going to press any key now, and I'm going to make sure that the document was stored and retrieved. There we have Damien. So there is RavenDB being hosted on a completely independent web server. And just to show you what else you can do with it as an application developer, is that in the future you might be able to do this. Package. You can do things like this. So you can use an external authorization, either something that you do yourself or something that's provided by maybe identity provider or some third party. And maybe then in your application, you want to mix things up a little bit. And maybe perhaps we also want some signal lower. I can remember the signal lower. Here. Map hubs. So we've got signal lower running with Raven, and we might want to handle use Nancy FX at the same time. But maybe then sometime we might want to create a map path. Actually, I think we have this supported. Map website. Use Nancy. Okay, for some reason it's not liking so much. Oh, sorry. Ah. So here's an example of a web application that uses an external authentication, hosts RavenDB. You may want to optionally, of course, do this. And now we've got Nancy FX and RavenDB and Signal Lower hosted in the same application, and hosted again in a server written by someone not from Microsoft. So that actually kind of concludes the demonstration of the OWIN feature that is coming in RavenDB 3.0.
Damien,
yes, go ahead.
If you can zoom a bit on the code so they can see what you wrote.
Okay, no problem. I should have realized that. I'll just quickly do a step through this one more time. So this here is the builder loader for hosting an OWIN application. We've configured it to use an external server. It uses HTTP Listener by default through another package, but we're not using that for this purpose. This will automatically activate our startup class. This is by convention. It doesn't implement interface or anything like that. And an IAP builder is supplied, and through extension methods that people extend off IAP builder, we're able to create a composable web application. And then here, this piece of code here, it obviously just proves that the host is in fact running, responding to requests, and is it's fully working. Daniel, is there anything else you'd like me to say on this area?
No, I think with the example we're good. We can move on.
Okay.
We have some questions, but we'll keep them to the end.
Just a brief mention. The oops, sorry, I'll drop down here. What we're thinking about doing, it's not quite ready yet, is that the embedded server and the embedded OWIN database will actually use a modified version of the lightweight client that internally invokes the same OWIN HTTP pipeline, but be purely in memory. It won't use a HTTP listener, but this brings full functionality, the exact same pipeline, exact same surface area, exact same a reduction in number of NuGet packages to work from an embedded version, as well as running it as a service or running it within your web application. And from there, I'd say thank you, and out to the floor for any questions.
Okay, so we already have a question from Khalid who asks, so OWIN middleware will RavenDB come with auth, studio, logging, etc.? Basically everything you have now in RavenDB, which includes the studio and the logging, it will, for the user who won't use OWIN, you won't feel the OWIN behind the scenes. So the transaction from this regard will be seamless. Yamin, do you have anything to add about this?
Yeah, so what OWIN middleware will RavenDB come with? RavenDB will, in its own right, just be a piece of middleware, and RavenDB handles logging internally. The studio, again, will be hosted internally. So from your perspective as an application developer, if you're using OWIN and you're using RavenDB, the only thing really you're going to see is this area here. Use RavenDB. Now within, I can just briefly show you what that actually looks like. There, that's an OWIN use RavenDB.
Yeah, and you're going to have to zoom on that because no one can see anything.
Yeah, no problem.
And
so,
at the meanwhile, if someone else has questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll keep answering.
With OWIN, you can create a lot of you can create a composable pipeline that is very nested and can be hidden from other people. So from inside RavenDB, we actually go ahead and use Web API. But what this gives the RavenDB developer options to do is to create other middleware in and around this, or create their own middleware. But generally, past this area here, it's all hidden from you. All you see is, all you'll be doing working with is that. Professor OWIN, Bill Jones, I'll tell you. Studio will act the same. Could you wire it up on a different port with different auth? At the moment, I think Daniel can answer this probably better than me, but I think at the moment the intention is for the studio just to be served as the static files from within the Raven.
This kind of relates to the first mystery feature, in which we introduced the new HTML client server. Sorry, studio. Basically, in 3.0, you're going to have both the Silverlight and the HTML studio, and we haven't decided which way you're going to approach each, but basically it's going to be the same. The root URL going to send you to the studio. And with OAuth, at the moment, if you want to use API key, you just have a parameter for that. You do API key equals and the key. So we're going to keep the same behavior. Nothing going to change it in this regard.
Certainly for this release, think failed. The studio will be hosted within and internal to Raven, and it won't have different auth and won't be running on a different port.
Exactly.
But I don't see in the future why we couldn't externalize that as a piece of middleware in its own right, and you can host it on your own.
At the moment, we're trying to keep the behavior the same.
Yeah, and in baby steps as well. We don't want to break everything for everybody yet. So I'm going to move to Khalid's question. What will the scope of OWIN hosts will you be supporting? Major ones are all implementations. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to support OWIN, and it's up to the hosts themselves to be matching the specification. There's a little bit of ambiguity around the building the actual composable app itself, the whole iApp builder. That's not technically OWIN, but literally only 30 minutes before this this webinar, I tried to run RavenDB on OWIN, which is the example that I demonstrated. So long as we respect the OWIN keys, sorry, the OWIN keys, and we respect any kind of optional keys, we can work without it. Raven should work on any own host that is OWIN compliant. I'm going to move to...
Matt asks if we know if any other databases use OWIN. I have no knowledge of this, so...
No, I don't know of any database or any database. And it's actually one of the first applications that I'm aware of. I've been involved with the OWIN thing for quite a little bit of a while now. But this is, I think there's a CMS coming along. I think there's a few people thinking about turning their applications into being OWIN compliant, especially their web apps. I think the idea is that you can create a master web application that you can drop in a CMS, drop in RavenDB. I believe ThinkTexture's identity server is going to be made OWIN compliant as well. So in theory we can have a hosted in the same app but independent an identity provider that can provide authentication to a RavenDB instance or however. I mean, the whole point is it's composable, and once we're meeting the specification and people create more kind of applications beyond just the middleware, we're going to see more of these kind of things appearing.
And I must say that we're seeing the fact that we're the first to use this because we found some bugs which the OWIN people were kind enough to fix very quickly for us. So,
yes, we found a number of issues regarding chunked bodies and buffering on the system web host that has been fixed. So we are leading the charge slightly, but at the same time, there's a straight-up development benefit for Daniels and for the guys to be able to, just embed Web API within Raven, and then people can embed Raven inside their applications, but they don't see Raven's Web API aspect of things. So it's nicely abstracted and layered in that mechanism.
Okay, Khalid is asking if we ran the RavenDB 3.0 on Mono yet. Not yet. Basically, the OWIN and Web API are not what stopped us from working on Mono. But like I said earlier, it's another mystery feature that will allow us the possibility to do that.
Yes. For instance, OWIN, N-O-W-I-N, the web server that I used for this, as far as I know, runs on Mono. Now, there are aspects regarding some of the middleware and security side of things that are not supported in Mono 3.2, and that is the claims principle and claims-based authentication support. But if we're not using that, and we're using Raven's doing its own custom auth for the moment, I think the option looks good.
The main problem with the running on Mono at the moment is that RavenDB uses eSent, which does not support Mono. So, so that's the main issue. Matt asked if we could hook up with a bundle into the OWIN pipeline, the same way he does at the moment.
So, also assume that a bundle developer can also hook into the OWIN pipeline from within RavenDB. At this point in time, I think the only exposure that has been designed for has been the ability for a bundle to handle a route, not actually get into the, and that's a Web API route, not actually hook into the OWIN pipeline as yet. Interesting idea, but I suspect if we open the door in there slightly, will it cause problems, either from a support issue mechanism or anything like that, or if you're changing kind of the behavior of the request and response once it's gone inside Raven. I don't know how I can't speak for the high rating Rhino guys, but I'm not sure how they would feel about that.
I'm not sure I understand what he's trying to do.
Well, I think
so. Answering another question, are you trying to modify the request?
Matt, I think if I would like to be able to have something here, some mechanism through an interface to be able to apply it's basically in here so we can a mechanism for mat supply and middleware that sits inside the OWIN platform. Now you could, Matt, of course, do it outside. And let's see here. That would modify the request that comes in before it hits RavenDB. Yes, okay, so yes, you have to pass a query string parameter from Raven client to my bundle. So your bundle would needs to be, okay, so you can't, this is not going to work for you. So you need a point to be able to intercept this. That's interesting. Well, I don't know how, Daniel, where you feel the...
Matt, I have my email there. Contact me and we'll see what exactly you want to do, and I will make sure you will be able to do that one way or another. Okay, so I guess we're gonna wrap it up. I want to thank Damon for being with us today and the past month when we worked on this feature.
I'd like to thank Daniel and the High Rating Writing guys for the opportunity to do that.
And good night, everybody.
Good luck. Take care. Bye-bye.